every time we baptize little ones in our church, we continue a chain that has connected families across generations. So what happens when that chain gets broken? Hi, I'm Father Kevin Zubel, a Redemptorist missionary serving in the Diocese of Baton Rouge. For us as Catholics, there's no greater sign of hope and joy and the promise of new life than when we baptize little ones in our church. Sometimes they're kicking and screaming and making a lot of noise, but we can't help but smile whenever we baptize the little ones and we see their proud families standing around the font. Baptism is foundational to who we are as Catholics and as Christians. Paul says in his letter to the Ephesians that we're united in this one spirit, one hope, one faith, one baptism. As we continue this video series, I'm beginning a series that I like to call Sacraments of Hope. We'll walk through each of the 7 sacraments and how they are signs of hope in the world, but talking about certain things that we're encountering today as we celebrate these sacraments that a lot of families are struggling with. And what inspired this is one of my first memories in ministry. I was serving as a transitional deacon, still a few months away from my ordination as a priest, and I was working in a parish and received a call. The woman was a grandmother and she was somewhat desperate. She said that she was going down the list of all the churches in the Archdiocese, trying to find one that would baptize her grandchild. And every one of them said no, because the first question they ask is, well, are the parents consenting to this baptism? And this grandmother couldn't get either her daughter or her son-in-law to consent to having her grandson baptized. So one after another, each church told her no. And I heard her story and I said, let me get back to you. Now, deep in my gut, I knew the answer was no on one level. But being a new deacon and being new to ministry, I didn't want to make any quick decisions right there on the phone. So I took a little time and I looked into this and that. I looked into canon law. I looked into the policies of the diocese, and I felt like I had come up with a better answer. So I called the woman back and I said, well, in our church, the baptism of a child, of an infant, requires the consent of one of the parents or the person who has legal care of the child. And it also requires that there is at least some hope that the child will be raised in a Catholic household. But know that in the event of an emergency or danger of death, we can baptize the child. And also, one thing to look ahead to is initiating your grandson when he's a little bit older. Once he's 7 years old, he can enter a program of formation if that's something that he's interested in and his parents are willing to support. And the grandmother told me, she said, I knew the answer was no, but you at least have given me some hope. And I know that this is something that's faced in a lot of families. I have a lot of grandparents who come to me and say that, they're very anxious because their children aren't having the grandchildren baptized. And so many grandmothers have looked at me and said, many times when I'm looking at them looking after them during the summer, I look one eye at that bathroom sink or that kitchen sink, and I'm so tempted just to quietly baptize them in the sink. And I can understand that sense of anxiety, that sense of urgency, because we know that baptism is the door to the sacraments. It's the door to the reign of God. And we know that the sacrament of baptism is essential for salvation and for being cleansed of original sin. And so those of us who've been raised in the faith and hold that belief very dear, to see the future generations not being baptized can cause a great sense of distress and a sense of urgency. So what can we do to restore that sense of hope and to keep our families united, even as future generations begin to wander away from the church and the sacraments? It's true that the sacrament of baptism is how we wash away the stain of original sin, and open the way into the kingdom of God. But baptism is also how we are incorporated into the church, into the body of Christ. It's one of the 3 sacraments of initiation that work with one another to bring us into that perfection as we go on our pilgrim journey as Christians. And so we often focus, when we have that anxiety to baptize the children as soon as possible, which is what the church calls us to do, that we have that anxiety that what happens if my grandson or my granddaughter get ill or something terrible happens and they haven't been baptized. And that's when we look to the Catechism of the Catholic Church that says, in that case, we entrust them to the mercy of God, and we remember that Christ himself said that his desire was that all would be saved. And so with holding that in our hearts, we can trust that there is a merciful solution, that these children are welcomed somehow into the kingdom of God, even if they have not gone through the waters of baptism. So I think when we look at how do we accompany our children and our aunts or our nieces and nephews when they become unwilling to baptize their children in the faith. And that's when we look at the other aspect of baptism that is just as important, that it's about incorporating new members into our faith. And when we talk about incorporating new people into the faith, we start talking about words like evangelization, mission, and proclaiming the gospel. Sometimes our role changes a little bit. That whenever we have children or grandchildren that are not interested or seem to be rejecting the faith, then we take on the role of missionaries. We take on the role of being evangelizers with our own family. And the power to change the mind of someone else isn't a power that we have. Conversion is a work of the Holy Spirit. What we can do is we can be faithful to our call to discipleship. We can be faithful to our life in the sacraments, and we can give witness to the joy that we receive whenever we follow the way of God. You know, and maybe those grandkids or those nieces and nephews, someday, though, they might be curious about some of the things they see in our homes, some of the sacramentals, the crosses, the rosaries. They might become curious, and those become sacred times of sharing the faith directly with them, so that maybe when they're a little bit older, they may ask their parents and say, I'd like to go to church with Grandma. I'd like to maybe learn a little bit more about the Catholic faith that's so important to Grandma and Grandpa. And so, don't panic. Don't be discouraged. Embrace the path that Christ has laid out for you. And remember, you may not even see the results of what you start in the hearts of the generations that follow you. Because again, as Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but it's God who gives the growth.